production of the Mississippi State University Extension Service.
Today on Farm Week, the U.S. House of Representatives passes a GMO labeling bill that would derail state-based efforts to require it.
In the food factor, when you eat outdoors this summer, worry about the bugs you can't see, not the ones flying by.
In Southern gardening, cold-tolerant bananas. They're beautiful and they come in a number of varieties.
In the markets, the nation's cattle herd is expanding some as soybean producers hope for an upswing in prices.
In the feature segment, meet Minnie Lou Bradley. This Texas cattle woman is an acknowledged leader in the Angus breed and the cattle business. She did it the old-fashioned way with hard work.
That's what I wanted to do. We will have owned this ranch 60 years come November. We bought it in 1955. We came on up here and the tumbleweeds were just right up to the windows of that old house. And so we started going out to the pastures. It looked pretty bleak to me.
Good day, everyone. I'm Leighton Spann.
And I'm Artis Ford. Welcome to Farm Week. Late last week, the U.S. House of Representatives passed a bill that would prevent states from requiring labels on foods containing GMOs.
Artis, the bill is called the Safe and Accurate Food Labeling Act. It passed on a 275 to 150 vote. It now goes to the U.S. Senate, where its chance of passage is unknown. This bill would allow food companies to state if a food product did not contain genetically engineered crops. It would not, however, require a label if it did contain GMO ingredients. This would supersede any state laws which require GMO labels, such as Vermont. To receive a non-GMO label, a food would have to be certified by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. More than 500 members of the Coalition for Safe and Affordable Foods support the bill. Many Farm Bureau federations, including those of Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Alabama, and Tennessee, are in favor of it.
Well, each year, the Beef Improvement Federation holds a symposium where industry professionals, producers, and researchers discuss current issues facing the beef industry. The mission of this group is to standardize the evaluation of beef cattle and thereby improve the quality of beef for consumers. Farm Week's Amy Taylor reports from their national meeting held recently in South Mississippi.
At the Beef Improvement Federation Symposium in South Mississippi, genetic improvement of cattle was one of the main discussion topics. Louis Meyer of South Africa says evaluating genetic traits of cattle is a necessity for his seed stock and commercial cattle operation.
We can do selection on very hardy and tough animals to help our customers in selecting the right animals and having hardy animals with longevity. It's a good selection tool for fertility and growth. Definitely we're going to use some of the DNA traits, and especially on fertility and longevity and the growth thing. We really need that back home, and if we can do the genomics thing and get it going, it could really assist us a lot in our selection of our keeper heifers and bulls for the market.
Mississippi State University Extension beef cattle specialist Dr. Brandy Carish says genetics are important as far as the beef consumers will buy at the store one day.
The average person, beef consumers, so they care about the product that we ultimately produce. The beef that's going to be on your plate from 3 years right now is being produced right now. Those breeding decisions are being made right now by the people that have been at this meeting. That steak that you go out and buy, that steak you buy at a restaurant, is going to be a really good, high-quality product that you're going to want to eat again and again.
To show examples, the BIF Symposium brought participants to successful cattle operations that rely on high genetic performance, such as Rockin' Bee Cattle in Wiggins. I'm Amy Taylor reporting.
Eating out takes on a different meaning in the summer since we tend to picnic or grill more in the backyard. In this week's segment of The Food Factor, Natasha Haynes with Mississippi State University Extension has some ways to keep foodborne illness off the guest list at your next outdoor meal.
Gotcha! Nobody wants uninvited guests at a picnic, especially bugs. But the most dangerous bug may be the bacteria you can't see. Bacteria grow and multiply rapidly. Food transported without ice or left out in the sun won't stay safe to eat for long. Clean preparation is essential. Wash hands in work areas. Be sure all utensils are clean before preparing food. Food cooked ahead needs plenty of time to cool in the refrigerator. Pack the cool food in an insulated cooler with ice to keep the food at or below 40 degrees. Don't put the cooler in the trunk. Carry it inside the air-conditioned car. At the picnic, keep the cooler in the shade with the lid closed. Use a separate cooler for drinks so that the one containing perishable food won't be constantly open and closed. Place leftover food in the cooler soon after serving. Any food left outside for more than an hour should be discarded. If there is still ice in the cooler when you get home, the leftovers should be okay to eat. Keep the stomach bug away from your picnic by keeping your food cool and properly stored. It's time to make healthy food a factor in your life.
And Natasha says be sure to have a way to wash your hands after you've handled raw meat. Consumer Reports says you can use a hand sanitizer if it has at least 60% alcohol.
Well, do you feel like you want to be in the tropics but without leaving your own yard? In this week's Southern Gardening segment, Extension horticulturist Dr. Gary Bachman shows us how elephant ears can give our landscapes a lush, tropical, exotic feel.
Most gardeners like plants that lend a tropical feel to the landscape. Some of the easiest tropical plants to grow that have big impact are elephant ears. There are two species commonly found in our Mississippi landscapes, Alocasia and Colocasia, and they're both called elephant ears. But today we're just going to look at Colocasia, which is also called taro. These all feature big leaves and big texture, but they're not all green. In fact, there are Colocasia with black leaves. A couple of fantastic examples are black coral and diamond head. Diamond head has jet black leaves that have a texture resembling corrugation. Black coral has large, glossy, chocolatey black leaves with finely ruffled edges. The large green leaves of blue Hawaii feature prominent bluish-purple veins. The edges are undulating and the dark burgundy petioles are glossy. Colocasia mojito adds a refreshing color splash to the garden with its medium green leaves speckled with dark flecks of purple. One of what I think is the prettiest of the Colocasia is red stem taro. This plant has beautiful green leaves and bright red petioles. Colocasia can be readily identified because of the downward pointing foliage. Be sure to grow in the full sun and provide consistent soil moisture. In fact, they can be grown in standing water. Going to the tropics may not be possible, but we can think we live there with Colocasia in the landscape. I'm horticulturist Gary Bachman for Southern Gardening.
Leighton Gary says that elephant ears are heavy feeders, so they like a fertilizer that's high in nitrogen. In our feature segment today, you'll meet a Texas cow woman who's known as an innovator in the beef industry. She not only raises cows, she even has her own brand name beef. Time now for the markets with Leighton, and you say hardwood sawtimber prices have easily outperformed pine for the last 7 to 8 years?
That's right, and we're going to have more on all the forestry products markets coming up. Also ahead in our segment, we begin the month of August. A shift in the supply picture on cattle looks to be in the future. Corn prices may be stuck where they are for a while, and lower prices are possible in soybeans. New since our last production, the USDA's cattle on feed and cattle inventory numbers. The number of cattle and calves in the nation's feedlots is up 2% from a year ago. Placements on to feed were up too, not as much, up only 1%. Meanwhile, marketings hit a new all-time low for the month. They dropped 5%. And the nation's inventory of cattle showed a 2% increase from 1 year ago. Traders say this last figure points to some herd expansion in the U.S. cattle business. Analyst Mark Gold describes the latest on-feed report as pretty bearish. He says overall we are seeing a shift in the supply picture on cattle now, and he cautions producers there's a tremendous amount of risk in the market. They need to protect the downside.
We've seen this fundamental shift now in the supply. We know demand has been tight, and we know demand with the stock market breaking 500-600 points in just a week is a little iffy out here. We've seen the wholesale beef prices come down. This is a time, guys, where you're still at relatively high prices that you need to be protecting the downside with some put options. Spend that money and protect the downside.
Time to break for a trivia quiz here on Farm Week. Our topic this week, the beef sector. And here is the quiz question. How many quarter-pound hamburgers can be made from the ground beef of a single steer? Here are the possible answers. A, 720, B, 875, C, 969, or D, 1,000 hamburgers. You'll find out which one is correct in a few more minutes.
We're going to pause for a short break on Farm Week. Coming up, we'll look at the calendar and the rest of the markets. Leighton Spann reports corn is stuck while beans are in a sell-off. Hardwood, however, is tops in the Mississippi wood market. In the feature segment today, when she started in the cattle business, she wasn't respected, but her success has now spoken for itself.
There are some moments in life where everything seems to be just right. Time slows down, and memories are made that will last a lifetime. That is, unless you've got fire ants. Then those memories can quickly turn into nightmares. It's time to bite back, Mississippi. Learn how to make your yard a safe place to play again at msucares.com/biteback.
Before we get back to the markets, let's look at the Farm Week calendar. Looking into August, 2 white-tailed deer management workshops will be held by Mississippi State University. You'll learn about deer nutrition, buck harvest strategies, and using technology to manage your deer population. The cost is $50 and you can register online. We'll have a link. Saturday, August 15th, the workshop will be held at the Mississippi Natural Science Museum on Riverside Drive in Jackson. The second will be held Saturday, August 22nd at Thompson Hall on the MSU campus in Starkville. Mississippi State University will host a fruit and vegetable producers field day on Wednesday, August 26th. The location is the North Mississippi Research and Extension Center at Verona. The hours are 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Field tours will be followed up with indoor presentations, which will include a look at late summer insect pests, vegetable disease identification, and orchard and vineyard management. Go to our Farm Week website at farmweek.msucares.com for information on these and other events. Now check out this week's Farm Week Snapshot.
We move into row crops and timber now in the second half of the markets. We begin with corn. Wells Fargo ag economist Michael Swanson says bluntly, this market is stuck at $4 to $4.50 for a while. He thinks there is increased pressure from the global marketplace at play. Swanson also told Brownfield Ag News that $4 corn creates tighter margins and that farmers will have to tighten their belts in some cases to break even over the next couple of years. The soybean market, meanwhile, remains under significant pressure as traders remain focused on improving weather conditions in some other parts of the country. Analysts say look for bean prices to remain volatile as we approach and get into August and the USDA's next report. The best advice from the pit, be ready to take advantage of any upswing in the oilseed market.
We've had a little bit of Chinese demand in this market the last week, but again, we're down so significantly from a year ago exports. And the Argentinians still have grain to sell. The Brazilians are still in the market. The competition has been intense, so we've got a problem in the bean market. The last time I was on this show, we talked about buying calls on June 1st. They had a nice run in corn, wheat, and beans, and we were able to take advantage of that. The funds were short. They've gone from short to long in all three commodities. Now I think they're probably pretty close back to even in the wheat and even in the beans. But if they want to get short in this next week or so, we can still see lower prices. Again, it may give us an opportunity again on the downside before the report, maybe get a bump after the report.
We end in forestry products, where it's no secret hardwood sawtimber prices have outperformed pine for some time now. Associate Extension Professor James Henderson says U.S. housing starts are one area to watch before we see pine sawtimber moving in the right direction.
James, what would the housing market, housing starts in particular, what would they have to do in order to see movement in the sawtimber prices for pine?
Typically, the level where we start to see some movement in sawtimber prices is around about 1.5 million units annually. That's the long-term historical average, about 1.5, and that's usually where we see sawtimber prices respond.
Now, the hardwood sawtimber prices, they have basically outperformed pine sawtimber since the recession, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Hardwood sawtimber prices around 2007 statewide were about $22 a ton. And over a 6-year period, we've seen an 80% increase in mixed hardwood sawtimber prices to about $40 a ton.
Now, pulpwood, of course, is another commodity when you talk about forest products, and since an international paper mill in Cortland, Alabama, right across the state line, closed, those prices have really lagged and suffered.
Yeah. Pine pulpwood prices are very different in northern Mississippi as compared to southern Mississippi, and we can point to the closure of the IP mill in Cortland as the primary culprit in that. In the second quarter of 2013, North Mississippi pine pulpwood averaged around $12.79 per ton. Just 2 years later, it's fallen to about $5.24 a ton. Now compare that with South Mississippi. Over that same 2-year period, the prices have remained virtually unchanged, around $10 per ton. So the closure of that IP mill had a big impact on the pulpwood markets in North Mississippi.
And basically that means higher transportation cost when it comes to getting the pulpwood somewhere where it can be processed.
That was one of the largest paper mills in the U.S. And its closure really devastated that market. And there's certainly a need for more markets, more competition in North Mississippi.
Back to trivia now to wrap things up in the markets for this week. The right answer is A. You can make 720 hamburgers from a single steer.
According to the latest Census of Agriculture, 14% of America's farms list women as their principal operators. Texas boasts the highest number of women farming, and one rancher in the Lone Star State has been ranching there for 60 years. Market to Market's Paul Yeager has this profile.
A new painting was hung this fall among 350 others, portraying the most influential leaders in the nation's livestock industry over the last century. This time, however, the face in the painting is that of a woman, only the second ever included in the elite saddle and sirloin portrait gallery.
I don't think I ever gave it a thought. It's what I wanted to do, and so I just did it.
What Minnie Lou Bradley of Childress County, Texas did in 1955 was step into a man's world of cattle ranching.
The boys have got to hunt all the draws and canyons for the cattle and get them bunched.
At the time, only a fraction of ranchers were female. Bradley balks, however, when others describe her as a crusader for women. As she sees it, she simply chose a career and made a go of it on cheap, drought-plagued land in the Texas Panhandle.
We will have owned this ranch 60 years come November. We bought it in 1955. We came on up here, and the tumbleweeds were just right up to the windows of that old house. And so we started going out to the pastures. It looked pretty bleak to me.
Bradley, who at 83 still runs Bradley 3 Ranch with her daughter Mary Lou Bradley Henderson and son-in-law James Henderson, remembers how she had to prove herself among the old school cowboys. She was just a few years beyond having become the first woman to earn an animal husbandry degree at Oklahoma State University, then called Oklahoma A&M, when she began ranching. One day, she helped vaccinate, castrate, and dehorn calves with a group of cowboys. And when her father-in-law, Rusty Bradley, gave her the opportunity to share her opinion, Minnie Lou didn't hesitate.
I said, the most cruel thing I ever saw in my life. And he said, what? And I said, dehorning these cattle. I'd never seen a calf dehorn. You know, that blood just squirting everywhere. He said, what? I said, that is brutal. And all the old cowboys sitting there, and of course, and we've lost that breed, but they carried you high about everything. I mean, you had to really, you know, defend yourself. And he said, well, just what would you do? You gonna let the horns grow on them and cause bruises? I said, no, I'd buy an Angus bull.
Gaining confidence in Minnie Lou, Rusty Bradley wrote her a check that day, telling her to bring him 5 Angus bulls, a breed without horns. At the time, Angus cattle were not popular in that part of Texas, and most ranches ran Hereford cattle. While her father-in-law backed her ideas and encouraged her, other men in the area questioned her career choice and her clothing, which was anything but traditional. Walking into a rural store one day wearing her cowboy hat, boots, and the pistol her relatives insisted she carry in case of rattlesnakes, she overheard the conversation of a group of cotton growers.
They weren't talking to me, but they were talking loud enough that, you know, I could hear them. And they said, can you imagine a woman horseback like she goes, blah, 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 yeah, you know. I just turned around and I said, I'd rather do that and have on an old cotton dress and stomping that cotton in that cotton trailer all day long. You know, because that was all right with them for their wives to work like that, you know.
Bradley began selling beef directly to small grocers and individuals in the 1970s. In 1986, she and daughter Mary Lou set up a meatpacking plant, B3R Country Meats in Childress, Texas. And it wasn't long before her daughter urged Minnie Lou to expand their market to urban areas.
She said, do you know there's more people in a block in New York City than there is in 3 counties here? And so I'm going where the mouths are.
Mary Lou's direct approach and Texas mannerisms resonated with those in the city, and the plant began selling directly to wholesale grocers, emphasizing health food. The B3R brand became so well recognized that its steaks were served at one of George W. Bush's post-inaugural celebrations. For a time, the plant provided meat for the certified Angus beef's natural product line. Eventually, though, outside offers became too enticing, and the family sold the meatpacking company in 2002. In the ensuing years, Minnie Lou added other credits to her bio. She became the first female president of the influential American Angus Association and was inducted into the National Cowgirl Hall of Fame.
I believe when Minnie Lou went through school, and also when I did, not maybe to the extreme, I do think women were in agriculture, possibly it wasn't okay to be as good as, you had to be better than. But because of women like Minnie Lou, it isn't that way today.
Late last year, fellow cattle producer Wesley Bonner wrote of Minnie Lou Bradley. 25 years ago, many in the industry thought her to be a niche market renegade, only to later appreciate her as a visionary. Despite these accolades, cattle production has been anything but easy. Last spring, the drought that plagued parts of Texas for much of the past 4 years almost brought an end to Bradley 3 Ranch. Grain prices were high and pasture conditions worsened with each passing day, prompting neighbors to cull their herds. And in May, Minnie Lou's daughter, an accountant by trade, talked to her about the books.
She said, I don't know how long we can keep going. And I said, Mary Lou, we said we wouldn't sell this cow herd. And she said, well, you know, there comes a time when you have to do something. And May the 23rd, it started raining.
Although the Texas Panhandle is still locked in drought, Minnie Lou's worries eased as the grass returned. When she was recognized by her peers in November at the North American International Livestock Exposition, Minnie Lou was praised for her intellect, vision, and courage. Thanks to the timely rains that saved the ranch, she would likely add luck to the list. And despite her many honors, Minnie Lou humbly extols the work of others.
After you go down to the Cowgirl Hall of Fame and you read about some of those ladies or hear an inductee, I haven't done anything. Those gals were tough.
For Market to Market, I'm Paul Yeager.
Well, we're at the end of Farm Week for this week. On our next show, we'll have a feature story edition of Farm Week.
We'll be looking back at the year 2010. It was an amazing comeback year in Mississippi agriculture.
Wild birds are expected to spread avian flu to the south this winter.
In the food factor, fish fats. There are some kinds of fat that you need to eat.
In Southern gardening, turn into a deadhead to make your flowers bloom longer. Before we go today, we've got to say goodbye to two of our workers here, student workers at the University Television Center at Mississippi State. Brandon McAnish and Caitlin Kaywell are both leaving us, and we look forward to hearing good things from them in the future as they go out into the world. And
because good studio personnel are hard to come
hard
by.
to find,
and
they have to replace themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's it for today. We'll see you next week.